In a recent comment from Mr. Liam Cowell and in an email from another peer, I was asked to do White Death, check into White Death from scaryforkids.com. It's on other places too, but I think that's the easiest resource for finding it on the net. Ms. Liam Cowell also asked me to check out Bunnyman and links it on Wikipedia. A quick glance at the Wikipedia Liam Cowell links for Bunnyman will show that it's mostly considered an urban legend, but regardless of whether or not it's completely a myth or a real phenomena, if we address it as a real phenomena, it's either, for the most part, described as a psychotic person in a bunny suit attacking people with an axe, or the ghost of a psychotic person in a bunny suit attacking people with an axe. Either way, there don't seem to be a lot of reports of it outside of Virginia. I can read you the short snippet of the legend on the Wikipedia, which says the legend has circulated for years in several forms. A version naming a suspect and specific location was posted to a website in the late 1990s by a Timothy C. Forbes. This version states that in 1904, an asylum prison in Clifton, Virginia, was shut down by successful petition of the growing population of residents in Fairfax County. During the transfer of inmates to a new facility, the transport carrying the inmates crashes. Some prisoners escaped or were found dead. A search party finds all but one of them. During this time, locals allegedly began to find hundreds of cleanly skinned, half-eaten carcasses of rabbits hanging from the trees in the surrounding areas. Another search of the area was ordered, and the police located the remains of Marcus Walster, left in a similar fashion to the rabbit carcasses, hanging in a nearby tree or under a bridge overpass, known locally as the Bunnyman Bridge. Along the railroad tracks at Colchester Road, the Bunnyman Bridge is along the railroad tracks at Colchester Road. Officials named the last missing inmate. It was Douglas J. Griffin. He was their suspect, and they called him the Bunnyman. In this version, officials finally managed to locate Griffin, but during their attempt to apprehend him at the overpass, he nearly escapes before being hit by an oncoming train where the original transport crashed. They say after the train passed, the police said that they heard laughter coming from the site. It is eventually revealed that Griffin was institutionalized for killing his family and children on Easter Sunday. For years after the Bunnyman's death, in the time approaching Halloween, carcasses are said to be found hanging from the overpass and surrounding areas. A figure is reportedly seen by passerby making their way through the one-lane bridge tunnel. Conley says this version is demonstrably false. Among other inconsistencies, Conley notes that there has never been an asylum for the insane in Fairfax County, that Morton Prison didn't come into existence until 1910, and even then it was an arm of the District of Columbia correction system, not Virginia's. Court records also show neither a Griffin nor a Walster. Cryptozoologist Loren Coleman, via his blog Cryptomundo, and in the book Weird Virginia, which has a section on the Bunnyman, sees a direct association between the legend of the Bunnyman and that of the Goatman of nearby Maryland. Now, regardless of whether or not this is true or completely made up, and whether or not the evidence suggests it's true or completely made up, I can't, at least not at the moment, go visit Fairfax County, Virginia to investigate this on site, which I think is the only type of investigation that anybody would consider legitimate, since of course you can get on the internet and argue something is real or fake all day, even if there's absolutely mountains of proof or no proof at all. Regardless, in the future I would love to investigate lots of cryptozoological reports, but for now, the other suggestion that came from Liam Cowell and one peer in an email, the White Death. The White Death is similar to, I suppose, for example, Tomino's Hell, except it's not in Japanese, it's not exactly a poem, but it fits along the same lines in the sense that it's a story or an amount of knowledge that results in some sort of paranormal penalty or effect on a person. Similar in ways to a curse, but more of a curse that happens to you once you know about something, once you learn about it. It'll make sense once I read this to you. The White Death is a creepy story about a vengeful spirit in Mexico who hunts down anyone who knows about her existence. Now, it goes on from here to give a fairly lengthy testimony. So what I'm reading from here is actually what's written on the screen now, and not my opinion or my own experience. I am currently sitting in front of my computer, scared witless. Every moment could be my last. My friend is here with me, and he is the sole reason why my life is in danger. It may not make sense at first, but let me explain. It all started earlier today when a friend of mine burst into my house and slammed the door behind him. His eyes were wide with fear, and he stood there with his back against the door, breathing heavily. I asked him, "What happened?" and he told me his story. He had been living with his aunt for the past year because his parents were in Mexico. They were doing mission work at a small hospital in southern Mexico. The previous night, a bedraggled man had stumbled through the entrance of the hospital. He was screaming in Spanish and appeared to be out of his mind with terror. They brought him over to a chair and let him sit down. As he caught his breath, he told his story in broken English. He claimed that his sister had been killed by something he referred to as Muerto Blanco. He kept saying that it was coming for him next. Confused, they asked him who or what a Muerto Blanco was. With a look of unfathomable fear on his face, he said that Muerto Blanco was the White Death. She is the soul of a girl who died years ago. She died by her own hand, he said, alone and unloved. She hated life so much that she wanted to remove all traces of herself from the earth. So great was her desire to completely obliterate her memory that she returned from the dead as a vengeful spirit bent on killing all those who knew of her existence. She is a girl, but not a girl, he said. She's not dead, but not really alive. She has cold black eyes that weep blood. She walks without ever actually seeming to move an inch. She stalks her victims like a wild animal, pursuing them across rivers and valleys, trailing them back to their homes. You are never really aware that she is following you until you hear her telltale knock upon your door. She knocks once for your skin, which she'll use to patch her own decaying flesh, twice for your hair, which she'll gnash between her teeth, 3 times for your bones, which she'll fashion into clubs, 4 times for your heart, which she'll tear out of your chest, 5 times for your teeth, which she'll polish and keep in a box, 6 times for your eyes, which she'll pluck out one by one, 7 times for your soul, which she'll swallow whole. No matter where you go, the White Death will track you down, and you will hear her terrible knocking begin on the door. You can try to outrun her, but she's faster than any mortal man. If you flee from your home while she's knocking on your door, she will follow you wherever you go. The terrified man was certain that this thing had killed his sister. He had tried to tell the police about the White Death, but they would not listen, dismissing it as an old wives' tale. Next, he had tried to tell his priest, but the priest immediately shut the door on the church in his face and turned him away. The priest had seen the White Death following him, he said, and did not want to get involved. With his head in his hands, the frightened man said that the White Death follows you forever until you tell someone else about it. Then it strikes. It kills you and begins following the person you told. After finishing his tale, the man stole a car from the mission hospital parking lot and vanished into the night. Apparently, my friend's mother and father had immediately called his aunt and told her about the strange man they had encountered. They asked her if she had ever heard of the White Death. She said that she had not, and they proceeded to tell her the story that the man had told them. The aunt got a phone call later that night. It was the Mexican police. They told her that the parents had been found dead outside the hospital. They had been torn apart. My friend's aunt had immediately called him at school to break the bad news to him. As he cried, she told him she couldn't understand what had happened. She recounted the whole story to him, telling him about the strange man who had turned up in the hospital just hours before his parents were found dead. She told him how the man had given his parents a weird and disturbing story about something called the White Death. When he hung up the phone, he had struggled to come to terms with what had happened. It almost didn't seem real to him. When he got home after school, he found the front door of his aunt's house standing open. Inside was a trail of blood, leading to the kitchen. There on the kitchen floor he found his aunt's dead body. She had been torn limb from limb. He ran out of the house and all the way across town, never looking back until he reached my house. As he told me his story, I could hardly believe it. Within the space of a day, his mother, his father, and his aunt had been murdered. It all seemed too far-fetched. But before I could utter a word, my friend and I both recoiled in horror as we heard a knocking begin at my front door. We've been staring at the door for an hour now, neither of us wanting to open it. The knocking is still going on, growing louder and louder. She never gives up, she never quits. Muerto Blanco is unstoppable. I think she wants to scare us, my friend and I. I think she wants us to blame each other, and I do. I blame my friend. It's all his fault. He should have never told about her. As I sit here in my house beside my friend, both of us listening to that hideous knocking growing ever louder, I wish a lot of things. I wish she had killed my friend before he reached my house. If he had never been able to tell me about her, I wouldn't be in danger now. I'm sorry I ever met him. And I'm sorry for you too. I'm sorry I made you read this story. I'm sorry I ever told you about the White Death, because now that you know about her, she'll be coming for you next. Now, if you scroll down, there are some comments from some people saying, don't worry, I read this 3 months ago and I'm fine. And there are comments from other people saying that the White Death scared them terribly bad. They told their friend about it and their friend said they heard knocks on their doors. There's people saying, please tell me it isn't true, I think I'm going to die. There are all of the typical traits of an internet argument. But regardless, instead of debating the validity of any of the 114 responses, at least on this website, and of course you can find this on other websites, I'll report back at the end of the week on whether or not I have been torn limb from limb or heard strange knocking at the door. And all of you, of course, if you did just listen to this, will have the opportunity to report back on anything you've experienced. And since I'm talking to you after you've just heard it, I can give you a heads up and say, since most people these days do own a smartphone or a phone with some type of recording device, if you hear some strange knocking on your door, take your phone with you. Keep it recording the entire time you open the door if you're worried about it at all. That way, no matter what happens, if it's, your grandparents and they have pumpkin pie, I'm not sure why they would be doing that, but say it's your grandparents and they brought over a pumpkin pie, you have a nice family video and it only takes you a second to delete from your phone. And if it's anything else, then you'll at least have something more than an internet argument, for example. And instead of saying, I think you'll be okay, or I think you shouldn't be worried, or anything along those lines, let's just wait and see. And I want to thank Liam Cow again for sending that in. And I forget the name. Whoever did send it to me in an email, I apologize for that. But you probably don't want me saying it anyway, because that would be part of your email and you might get spam, so good. And thanks to everybody else that send in suggestions. Do keep sending them in. I know there's been several online ones in a row, but I've been putting a lot of these off. Some of these are very, very old suggestions. Regardless, keep sending them in. I appreciate it, and I'll be getting to everybody's suggestions eventually. It's just a matter of time. Thanks again. Oh, and if you don't want to miss your suggestions when you send them in, future ideas, critiques for experiments, repeats, anything like that, if you subscribe, YouTube will send you alerts whenever I do upload, and that'll make sure you don't miss anything new.